I recently got 2 books in the mail that I thought I would talk about old time radio, and they're both by Martin Grams Jr. This one I actually bought on his website, and this other one, which was his first book back in 1997, I bought used for pretty cheap. But so yeah, what happened was I recently was looking on his blog, Martin Graham's blog, and noticed he had all these books available. In fact, here's a little catalog that he has that came with this book. Like he has a book about the Green Hornet, a book about the Twilight Zone, and some other stuff there. There's the info about the Green Hornet book. I might have to get that Green Hornet one. There's the info about the book on the Shadow. And he also has a book about Inner Sanctum that he did about 20 years ago, I guess. It also sounds pretty cool. And here was his little thing that about his GoFundMe and so forth. But anyways, so what happened was I had read the Amazon preview of the Shadow book. Because Amazon, if you go to Amazon and look up a book, sometimes they'll have a preview that you can click. And sometimes the preview can be very extensive, like a whole chapter. And this book is like over 800 pages long. So the preview was like of chapter 1, went on and on and on. So as I'm sitting there reading it on my phone, I thought, you know what, I might as well just buy it because buy the book, because what I was reading was so fascinating and so detailed. So when you go to his website right now, this book is on sale for like $25, regular like $40 some, and with shipping it came to a total of like $29 and some cents. So it was just under $30 for this book. Definitely worth it, like I said, because of how thick it is. Now, if you go read the Amazon reviews, especially of this book here, his first book, this one came out in 1997. The Amazon reviews of this, there's a lot of people complaining about the typos and things like that, how it's not very organized. But he was really young when he put this out. And so there's the copyright info. And, some of the stuff you could probably just get, the information online about, lists of suspense episodes. But like when you get to the log part here, but some of this is really detailed. You're not really going to find that, on Wikipedia. So it's still valuable to have this information as a reference guide. When did certain episodes air and so forth. So that's what the bulk of this is, the episode guide. But, there's also lists of things. Now, let's see here. There was one thing, alphabetical order for easy reference. I remember looking for the Dunwich Horror and not being able to find it in the thing. It's the H.P. Lovecraft story, the Dunwich Horror, but in the suspense episode from like 1945, I noticed that they pronounce it Dunwich. I remember when I looked in here, I couldn't find Dunwich isn't listed unless it's under the or something. But anyway, so that was kind of like, that's not as complete, but it is in here. If you just have to go to, if you happen to know the year, that there it is right there, the Dunwich Horror, episode 165. I remembered it was like 1945 when it came out. So anyways, this book is a little not as organized as the Shadow book. Like I said, it's his first book, and it's so you're trying to read it like in order, and he starts talking about various things here. He has quotes from people talking about the series. But so that's the suspense book. But the Shadow book, this is amazing. There's the back cover. Here's the thing so you can see how thick it is. Like I said, this book here, the suspense book, I don't even know if it has page numbers. I don't think it does, but it's like 200 some pages, maybe 300. But this one is over 800 pages. Let's see if it tells us here. Let's say 836 when we have those ads. Yeah, the index ends on page 831. The interesting thing about this, and this came out in 2011, comparing it to the Amazon preview, you know, I think it was the preview I think was probably showing the Kindle version of this book. What doesn't come across in the Kindle preview, though, is the page layouts, which are pretty cool, because he has all this, you know, when he's talking about something in here, you'll have a picture here to accompany it, like, you know, so there's lots of photos. Now, there's also even footnotes here, too, and the footnotes are in, like, microscopic print. You have to get really close. But right here, he's talking about the very earliest incarnations of the Shadow radio show, like how it came to be in, you know, 1930 and 1931, you know, well before, you know, Orson Welles came on the scene in 1937 to portray the character. This is sort of the forgotten, you know, aspect of the Shadow, because none of these episodes still survive. You know, these are all lost. There are Shadow short films which gives us an idea of what the Shadow radio show would have been like, because back then Shadow was sort of like the Whistler. You know, he was the host of a crime drama, you know, with his laugh. You know, that was the famous Shadow laugh. But it wasn't until 1937, when Orson Welles took on the role, that he became a actual character in the stories. The Shadow. He was an adventure hero, more like the Shadow magazine, the pulp hero. But anyway, so this is about the early version, and here this is just still chapter 1. Like I said, there's like little sidebars and things like that are really probably going to get hard to get across in the Kindle version. Again, there's another footnote, loaded with footnotes. And you can see there's a lot of illustrations. Like almost every page has like illustrations on it, and photos and so forth. So finally we get to the radio log of this one is way at the back. There's a thing about Brett Morrison, who was the person who played the Shadow the longest. So here is like a sort of quick guide of the series starting in 1930, and then you get into, that's like the episode guide for that. And then the continuity years is what he calls the from 1937 to 1954, when the Shadow was an adventure hero. So you have detailed listings of all the episodes here. And of course, like the ones from 1950 and 1954, most of those no longer survive. So this is way more detailed than you're likely to get, you know, elsewhere. So it's great as just a reference guide, you know, reference book. And then there's an article here by another author talking about the Australian radio series of the Shadow. Because sometimes you'll hear, you know, a Shadow episode's actually an Australian version, back from, you know, the 1940s. And so forth. So there's all these little things, little additional things. Then you have the index. There's like an episode index, story title, and then you have the other index. Now, there was one thing that I thought was interesting. When he has a thing here about Phil Baker, page 82, he doesn't mention in there that when I was doing radio research back in the 90s, looking at old newspapers like the New York Times, Phil Baker's show back in the 1930s had a character called the Shadow, if I remember right, who was sort of a heckler in the audience. And so that was around the same time as, 1930, early 30s, like 1932, 33, somewhere around there, that, the Shadow was first making a name for himself on radio. I may be misremembering some of that, but I thought for sure that would have been mentioned in here, since he is so detailed about that early period, that, Phil Baker's show having a shadow might have been mentioned. Of course, there was a popular song too, Me and My Shadow, back in those days. But anyway, so yeah, the Phil Baker connection wasn't mentioned. The only bit about Phil Baker there was some unrelated thing about the announcer on the show. But anyways, I do recommend this book. Like, I just got this in the mail today, so obviously I've not read it, but I can see that this is something that I'll be referring to for years to come. It'll probably take a long time to even just read all of this, but it'll make for fascinating reading. And again, this one too, like I said, was kind of a little rough around the edges, but does have a lot of information too. He could probably update this one, and make it more in the style of this later book, and it would be a masterpiece. So yeah, I see these as more than just reference books. They're sort of like, something like this. I don't know if Martin Graham's actually sees it the way I do, where this is something like history, a history volume that is really this is a work of art in itself. To have all this information collected into one place is very impressive. Now he has a habit, both in this early book and also in later books, that he sort of will boast about how his information is more properly researched, whereas other biographers have passed along facts that aren't properly authenticated. And so he doesn't consult he doesn't consult fanzines or consult other books that are on the same topic. And it does sound a little bit like he's tooting his own horn sometimes. That can he probably doesn't realize that comes across as a little annoying, as like he's superior to other people who have written on the same subject. But this is probably the best book about the Shadow Radio series that one could ever do or could ever buy. And like I said, it was only $25. So if you're a fan of the radio series, definitely recommend the Shadow book, especially at this current price. Like I said, it was only a little less than $30. And I'll have a link to his website in the description, but actually there it is right there. So you just go to that website there and check it out. Like I said, I might end up getting the Green Hornet one too. And the Inner Sanctum one looks interesting. And so does the Twilight Zone. Even though I have a book about the Twilight Zone already, this one looks like it may be even more detailed. So worth checking out. Thanks for watching.